about the things.
And welcome to the Corner Cafe. And look who's here! Wow, it's like, where has Jamie been?
Where's J-Mo?
Yeah, where's my husband?
J-Mo?
Well, he's only busy being married and stuff, happily married. So
a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I had some shows to do, and oh my gosh, the married stuff to do, and it just keeps you busy.
Well, you know, I recently interviewed Andy Tate with The Rush to Reason, and he's going to buy a wig, and he's trying to convince me, that he'd make a good Jamie Daniels.
Okay.
I don't know. I think he would be a
He
good
might have
stand-in.
to darken the skin a little bit, put a little brown, a little chocolate there on the skin. We'll have to see. Stay tuned for that one. We'll see.
I can't wait to see his wig.
Yeah, I know, right? Because my hair is typically poofed up, so I'm thrilled to see that myself, how that's gonna pan out. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we have a lovely guest today.
Yes.
I can't wait to introduce this lady. She's a recent friend and just a joy. We have Sarah Lee on the Corner Cafe. Welcome to the Corner Cafe.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Gosh, it is our pleasure, sincerely.
Definitely. Sarah, you've just been a blessing to me. I met you recently and just kind of heard about your ministry. And you know, this idea of eating disorders, I think, is really misunderstood in our culture. And you have a ministry helping people get out and to heal from eating disorders.
Yes, I do. And I love from the beginning, Rachel, that you refer to it as a ministry because it really is my passion work. Before I went into private practice and became a certified coach, I was in like the big corporate business world. I never imagined that I would be in mental health. But as you know, Rachel, I have lived experience throughout my 20s. I struggled with an eating disorder. And I have fully recovered, and I really felt the Lord calling me after 10 years of my own recovery to go and help other women, break free of these food prisons and all this body hate. And so that's what I did. I went and figured out how to get the education and skills to accompany my lived-in experience to help others.
That's beautiful. And then how did the Lord, because, being in the corporate world, how did the Lord, maybe a couple examples of him kind of moving on your heart saying, hey, no, this is what I want you to do? Because I know that it's an adventure with him. And sometimes, like 10 years ago, would you have thought, hey, this is what I would be doing?
Yeah, I always say this because when the Lord is really speaking to me, he speaks to me, Rachel, very directly and in short form. It's like he wants to make sure I'm hearing the message. It doesn't happen all the time, but when he does, I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention. And this literally came out of nowhere for me, in a sense. Well, God knew where it was coming from, but my mom had passed away at just 61 years old, and she struggled with all kinds of health-related issues, circling back to her struggle with weight, her lifelong struggle with weight. And it was she was such a beautiful, human being, and I'm blessed to have her as my mom. But I literally heard the Lord about 8-9 months after my mom passed away. I remember sitting there thinking, I've had a great career. I've done really amazing things. I've been in, leadership positions and led hundreds of people, but something just feels like it's missing all of a sudden for me. And in that quiet time, I literally heard the Lord say, I want you to go help other women with food and body issues. And Rachel, I'm telling you guys, I was like, how am I going to do that? It seemed like I was so far removed from that. A lot of people didn't even know I had struggled at one time. It was kind of like a thing of my past, but that got dropped on me. And I figured I set out on, okay, how am I going to fulfill this calling, and became very passionate.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, me being new to your ministry, and bravo, sincerely, it is desperately needed because of, especially for the society that we're living in now, basically at any time. My question to you is, I'm not sure if you know the number to this, but statistically, how many women deal with this type of issue?
I love that you asked that question, and my mind is full of statistics. So you can ask me a statistic, I'm probably going to know or get pretty close anyways. But one thing I'd love to say on your question is there's a lot of myths about eating disorders, and one of them is that it's specifically a female issue. And eating disorders do not discriminate. They affect all genders, all races, all ages. I've had clients as young as 12 all the way up to 63 years old. Now, I personally only work with women, but there's plenty of men that struggle too. Overall, as a collective, it is estimated right now 28 million to 30 million people in the United States will struggle with an eating disorder in their lifetime. And this is estimated, and I would, say that I bet it's more than that, because eating disorders live in shame and secrecy and isolation.
Right. Yeah. So that's, this is the thing. When I heard about your ministry, I was so thankful, because kind of going back in my past, having friends who I felt had an eating disorder, but I was young. I didn't know how to bring it up. I never brought it up. I just kind of ignored it. And I think a lot of people like myself are just ignorant of, well, first of all, how do we talk to somebody in our lives who we feel is struggling with that? Yeah. And then we don't really know the root causes, right? So what are some misconceptions regarding eating disorders?
So lots there. I'm like, okay, we can't run out of time because I want to say it all. First, I want to just mention, if you know someone that's struggling, one of the best things you can do is not focus on food and body specifically. So for example, if you saw a friend or family member that you suspected, one of the best ways to approach that is to say, I've noticed that you don't seem yourself lately, or you feel down. Would you like to talk about what is going on? Because as soon as we bring up food and body, you may get the shame, embarrassment, just that resisting of like, I don't want to talk about this. So try to focus on other things, because the eating disorder itself is kind of like a cover of other things going on. You also mentioned, Rachel, like, how does basically someone develop the eating disorder? We don't really understand that. Well, I do. So I'm here to share it with you and all your listeners. It's basically like a perfect storm, a synergy that comes together. There's a genetic component that has been really studied specifically with anorexia nervosa. There's a biological component. And what I mean by biological, I mean more like traits and temperament of an actual person. There's the environmental factors, there's the social factors, and then not all the time, but a large percentage of people that struggle also have some sort of trauma. So when you put all those together, it becomes a way to try to gain some control, try to numb out. It becomes a coping skill in a lot of ways. I'm generalizing it right now, but that derives from all of these pieces of the puzzle. I'd love to talk about some myths, but do you have anything like you wanted to add to what I just said, or any questions?
Well, I feel like Jamie wanted to.
Okay, Jamie, give it to me.
Sarah, I'm not sure if this is leading into your overall, statement that you're going to make, but I found it in your earlier portion. You said that, because I was completely biased about this, and also ignorant. When you said it doesn't just apply to just women, there was a lot of men. That struck me, because I was like, wow, really? Men? And so you could tell how unaware I was in that regard. So, I mean, men, that's just,
Jamie, men.
That's crazy, but wow, men? Wow.
Men. Men are being as affected as women, especially now in our culture and social media. And for men, there's a lot of times this pressure to have a large, more masculine tone, low body fat type of image. And
Yeah.
so, men can easily fall into places where it's all about, what you're doing at the gym. There can be some exercise compulsion. There can be body dysmorphia going on. There are plenty of men that can also struggle specifically with bulimia, right? So let's say they're on like this high protein, lean diet, and they decide to go out and party with their friends, and they feel bad when they get home. Bulimia can exist. Also, I'm kind of talking about several eating disorders here. Binge eating disorder was officially a diagnosis in 2013, and binge eating affects the most people, almost 3 million people. And men specifically, Jamie, can really struggle with binge eating in midlife, and they don't always seek help. A lot of times they don't seek help, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you specifically, Sarah, work with women. Do you have somebody, a male, who also specializes in this that you can kind of, send?
Yeah, such a good question. As far as certified coaches, we're like a powerful adjunct to the treatment team. So sometimes, I will work solely with somebody if they're, at a certain place in their recovery. But a lot of times eating disorders, depending on where someone is at, needs a therapist and a dietitian and a coach. So as far as coaching is concerned, there's actually only one male certified coach. So yes, of course I've befriended him. So when I have people that come my way, I can have him help me. I've just chosen to work with females specifically because the coaching relationship is an intimate one. For example, I'm in the trenches with them. They can text me between sessions. I'm the person when they're like, I literally haven't eaten today and I cannot eat dinner. They're texting me. So just because of the intimacy of the relationship, I just personally feel more comfortable, working with women, but men need help too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, Sarah, I know you've talked about anorexia, bulimia, and what other type of, I guess it was like a disease, if you will. Is it safe to say that?
Yeah, it's officially mental illness, 100%. And, that's why there's these myths, right? So for instance, Jamie, some of the main myths are, it's a younger females kind of issue, it'll kind of fade with time. Another myth is around, unless you are in a very thin body, you're not really that sick, you don't have a problem, which on the contrary, by the way, the majority of people who struggle with an eating disorder are either average or above weight, not underweight. So that's a whole myth. And it's not that serious. Like, it's a lifestyle choice is another myth, and it's not. It's mental illness, and living through it and helping all the people I help. You are in a mental prison where you're so afraid of food. You really just hate your body so much and are obsessed. I personally became a human calculator, calculating, measuring everything. It was always going on in my head, and nobody knew. So it is very serious. And on that note, here's another statistic. Eating disorders are the second highest in mortality rate of any mental illnesses.
Wow.
Eating disorders were actually number one until the opioid crisis took over the United States, and that's now number one. But eating disorders are second, with a leading cause, with anorexia nervosa has the leading cause of death. So it's so serious. It's not a lifestyle. It's not just young girls struggling. It's not a female issue. This is major, and it really impacts more people than you realize. And if I kept it a secret, I was high achieving, everything in my life seemed great, my body never got so thin where people were like, is Sarah okay? Actually, on the contrary, I got compliments all the time, Rachel, Jamie, on how I looked. And all that did for me is reinforce my eating disorder.
Yeah.
That's all it did. And people mean well. When we compliment each other on how we look, we mean well. But what I would love to share and just spread this awareness is you never know why someone looks the way they do. So you can't assume health based on how someone looks or well-being or what's happening in their mind.
Right.
And Sarah, obesity falls into that category of mental disorders as well, correct?
Yeah, clinically speaking, obesity is treated as like a medical issue, but a lot of people that can struggle with obesity in their weight can have a disordered relationship with food of some kind too. There's even, I'm naming all these categories, right? But there's another diagnosis called OSFED. It's an acronym, but basically it's a diagnosis like if you don't fit perfectly in like the binge eating box, the bulimia box, the anorexia box, but you have a struggle with food in your body, this is the diagnosis, OSFED. And within that, to this point you're bringing up, Jamie, there are people that actually struggle with what's called atypical anorexia. That means they actually hit all the boxes of anorexia except for one: weight.
Wow. We're sure.
And they can actually live in a larger body, but have these same exact fears, behaviors, body dysmorphia, all of that as someone that is in an underweight body.
Wow. Well, just, this is so needed to talk about this subject. And I know in February was the National Diseating Week, if you will.
Eating Disorder Awareness Week. Yeah. It's a national week. And it's even been put into legislation where the week is just all about spreading awareness and truth, just like what we're doing on the show today to help people. And I think most of all, my passion is releasing the shame. You're not alone.
Right.
If you are struggling, if you feel obsessed, if food is interfering with your life and your relationships, you deserve help. And, had someone told me when I struggle with my eating disorder, not only will you be recovered, but you're going to help others, I would have told you were out of your mind. I would have never fathomed that, but that just shows the goodness of the Lord and that his plans are perfect, right? And he can take our brokenness and use it for good. So I'm so grateful and honored to be trusted in that way. But the struggle is real, and so many people are afraid to reach out and get help. And I just want to encourage those that are listening to us, if you're struggling with this, if you know someone's struggling, I even answer questions. Like you can go to my website, sarahleerecovery.com, send me a message, even if it's just like, I'm not sure and I want some advice, I'm there.
Yeah, you're the sweetest.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
And so I can see how what you're doing, you're just really blessing a lot of people, and you're a safe place for a lot of ladies. We're going to go to a break real quick. We'll be right back.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
This event was shocking and disturbing, especially considering where it took place. Catholic University of America hosted a class lecture by Rachel Carbonneau, a self-declared abortion doula, which is a coach of sorts for women having abortions. She also practices Reiki, a method of spiritual healing and self-improvement incompatible with Christianity. She talked to students about coaching women through aborting their babies and coaching what she called pregnant men to deliver babies. See what I mean? Disturbing that it took place on the campus of a Catholic university. School officials said she would not be speaking again, and they are recommunicating the expectations for outside speakers. The professor responsible for inviting her was fired. Thank God.
Follow us on social media at Life Issues Institute.
When my friend Carolyn McCulley was a new believer in Christ, she visited a married couple and told them about a man she'd been dating.
The way I described him was harsh, and it was unkind, and it was self-righteous.
That husband surprised Carolyn with his response.
He said, "Whoa, I am so glad I did not know you as a single man. Your tongue is so sharp, I would have just run from you."
Instead of dismissing this man as overly sensitive, Carolyn took his words to heart.
There's something about the way women speak, especially the way they speak of other men, that men pick up as being intimidating.
Talking harshly about men or to men is so accepted today. But just as the Bible calls men to love their wives, it also tells wives to respect their husbands. And I think the principle applies to our interactions with all men. God created you as a woman with a unique purpose and beauty. Are you reflecting it through your words? With Seeking Him, I'm Nancy DeMoss Wagamuth.
And welcome back to the Corner Cafe. I am Rachel Maines, and Jamie is back. And I just want to say real quick before we get back into our interview, you can go to our website, cornercaferadio.com, and check out all the videos, you radio listeners. We are doing videos now, so you can see our smiling faces. And we have the sweetest lady ever. We have Sarah Lee with us. And Sarah, Jamie has a question because he's gone to Brazil recently.
Yeah.
And
I'm loving Jamie's questions, by the way. I'm like, yes. Quiz me, test me.
Well, Rachel and I were talking during the break, and I said, I'm going to ask Sarah because I said, there's got to be some sort of, difference between countries and cultures, the way we eat and how we eat. And you had mentioned earlier that regarding the National Week of Disorder, legislation gets involved and things of that nature. So my question, Sarah, is when I went to Brazil, I never eat 3 meals a day, ever. And I was eating 3 meals a day and snacking, and I felt like I never gained weight, and I had great energy. I was great. So, but when I come back to America, it feels like that, the food is heavier. They put more, the FDA allows more chemicals or processing, thanks, Rachel, in the food. So I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of difference also with, what maybe some of the chemicals in our food here that may not be in other places, that as Americans, we may suffer more and have those mental breakdowns. Am I off base here, or you let me know?
You're not off base. Our food supply is certainly different than other countries, and we have a plentiful food supply, but there's a lot of convenience, more fast food that kind of meet our overall lifestyle in our country. I'm a big believer, that all foods can fit in a healthy diet, if you will. And it really is about, moderation and making sure you're giving your body the fuel and nutrition and nourishment it needs, but not being afraid, to have pleasure and have fun. I mean, I believe food should be fun and pleasurable. So the difference, though, is in some countries, so you bring up Brazil, for example, there are different cultural regimens around food, and sometimes the food itself is just made and produced differently. So it's not that we are lacking here in the United States, but I do think there's room for us to continue to have knowledge around what's healthy for our body. But you know what I think our biggest thing is, and Jamie, maybe you can bring this back to your experience, is that we don't slow down.
Right.
One of our biggest issues in the States is slowing down. I work with people worldwide, by the way. If they're locals and they're close to me, I'll go to family dinners, I'll eat with them, I'll do all those things, but I can also work virtually. So I've been virtually to Australia, the UK, the Bahamas. I mean, I could keep going. And I pick up these differences in different countries, and that's one of our major hurdles. Like, we don't slow down enough with food. Now, a lot of the more modern cultures, if you will, such as ourselves in Australia, we're very similar with Australia. We have very similar struggles, with overall body image, what we view as beautiful, what we view as attractive and healthy. So some of those similar messages certainly reside. But as we become more of a global economy, that's affecting everybody. I've worked with someone in India before, and their culture is completely different. And this little 16-year-old, she was really struggling with bulimia. And so no country's protected, just like eating disorders don't discriminate, but we do have a different tradition and relationship with food than some of the other countries.
Right.
And I can concur to that because I was on vacation, so I had slowed down.
Yeah, I call it like vitamin S. Like when you slow down and you can enjoy your food, your cephalic phase of digestion, that just basically means the digestion of the mind. Like you can taste it, you can enjoy it, you can have a moment. Whereas a lot of times here, right, Jamie, you're like, let me grab something to eat for lunch. Oh gosh, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. Let me get a snack. You know, and some of our food, I'll just say it, even though I believe all foods can fit, some of our food here, we have fantastic food scientists and on purpose make food that we want to keep craving and
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So sometimes there can be a play in there with highly palatable food, and we know that that releases dopamine in the brain. So let's take someone that is super stressed, has a lot going on in their life, even maybe struggling with depression. If they eat highly palatable food, their dopamine is released in their mind, which is going to make them feel better in the moment. So it's a real chemical reaction. And then that can lead to someone feeling like, okay, I'm completely out of control because I can't stop eating this certain food when there's a lot of factors in play.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, Sarah, because it's not entirely about body image. You were saying that you know, a lot of people have had trauma, so this is a way of coping. So this is just the mechanism of coping. Whereas maybe some families, you know, alcohol is a way of coping. So this is just, so explain how that works with trauma, and just it's not just all about body image when you are suffering with the eating disorder.
Absolutely. And I've worked with people with eating disorders that actually don't have the body image piece. I have a client right now that she desperately wants to gain weight. You know, so it's the minority that have that, but it falls into this coping category. I'll give you a real quick version of just my personal experience. So my eating disorder was triggered specifically out in the midst of coming out of an abusive relationship. And I had just had my son, who was 6 months old at the time. And when I say abusive, it just mentally and emotionally abusive. He did have a temper and things like that, but it never got like real physical. But I had really bad self-esteem. And during my pregnancy, obviously I gained weight. That's what happens to the female body. But he made me feel really bad. So after I had my son, I went on a mission. For the first time in my life, I started dieting, and I was trying, all the pills at that time. Maybe people remember Metabolife and all these things. And so it wasn't in my mind at that time a direct result of this relationship I was trying to remove myself from. But it was this way to be like, I want to feel better about myself. I want to regain some sense of control in my life. Right. And I wound up eventually at Weight Watchers. And back in the day, we didn't have technologies, right? So you actually went to a Weight Watchers center, you went to the meetings, you got on a scale, they weighed you. If you lost even an ounce, everybody clapped for you. Now I think about that, and I'm like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. But I went there and lost all my weight that I gained through pregnancy plus more. And after being 6 months at the perfect little point counter, did it all perfect, I had dinner where there was chocolate cake. And everyone was like, have the chocolate cake, have the chocolate cake. You look so good. And like this tunnel vision came over me. Like I couldn't hear anything around me. All I could do is this chocolate cake. And I remember taking a bite because we were sharing it. And like, I don't think I can stop. What is this? What is this? And so because my mind had become a calculator, and I knew that cake probably was like a whole day's worth of Weight Watcher points. It was that evening I had this thought, like, this can't stay in me. I've messed everything up. 6 months is all, like, what did I just do? And that was the first time I purged in self-induced vomiting. And I remember walking out of the bathroom, and I'm sorry if this is triggering for anybody, but I like to just speak in real terms. I remember walking out of the bathroom saying, okay, I'll never do that again. I don't know what that was. That launched me 7 years into my eating disorder. And I was stuck. It felt like no choice. Like I had no choice. So trauma, to answer your question, Rachel, for me, it really triggered the mental illness in my brain that came from this place of I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I want to regain some control of my life, I want to feel better in my skin. And in addition to when I mentioned biological factors play a role, I admit I can be a perfectionist. I can be high achieving. I can get obsessed about things that I'm working on or doing. And so those played into it because, right, when you apply that to food and body, it can go wrong real fast. And of course, through recovery, I learned how to use all my traits and temperament for good and know when, it's not serving me well.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, you're a huge blessing, and we're just so thankful for your ministry, and we're so thankful and honored to have you on Corner Cafe. We have more questions, but
we've got to have her back.
We'll have to have you back because it's only a half hour.
Yeah,
so.
part 2.
I know. Well, when Rachel said a half hour, I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do that, but okay, because I got stories, I got all kinds of things to share with you. Most importantly, recovery is possible. Right, recovery is possible, and I just want everyone to know, reach out to me if you need help. Go to the National Eating Disorder Association. They got a free screening tool that's private. Just don't sit in this. Know that you can be recovered. If I can do it, you can do it.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sarah. And your website one more time so people can get in touch with you.
SarahLeeRecovery.com.
All right. Well, we're going to have you back, Sarah. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all you're doing.
And thanks for tuning in, and we're going to see you at the cafe next week.
This is forever.